Hello and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzie Ostwald. Today we're out of the studio and in the heart of beautiful Valle Crucis, North Carolina. We're in one of the most historic church buildings in the high country, the Church of the Holy Cross, an Episcopal church, and I'm joined today by Father Allan McCaslin, and we're going to talk about the history of this church and its role in the community. Thank you, Father McCaslin, and you told me earlier to call you Allan, so right. I'm going to do that. Right. As I was looking at your website, I noticed that you are Rector and Priest.
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me, I think I know the difference, but I would like to hear it from you, what those two roles entail.
All right. Well, again, and welcome, Ozzie. We're delighted to be with you today.
Thank you. It's great being here.
It's wonderful for us. And a priest, obviously, is someone who's ordained in ministry to serve the people of God in a specific spot. The rector role is someone who's actually in charge of the parish. So I'm a priest, but also administratively responsible for everything that happens here. So a lot of churches, you can be a priest and that's it, and others, you are also the rector. It's an Old English term.
Okay. So does the parish encompass more than the church? Is it a geographical region? Could it include more than one church, and does it in this case?
It could, it doesn't in this case.
Okay.
It's the Church of the Holy Cross. We do have a summer chapel, St. John's, but it's all still part of the same church.
Yeah, and you've been here a dozen or so years, right?
Yes, 12 years.
Yeah, so what brought you to this particular charge?
Well, I'll tell you, we're glad we never went back. So we're here in the high country. It's terrific. It was just a sense that it was time to move on from our former position. And there is a website that Episcopal clergy go to in the Office of Transitional Management, and you go there and check to see what's open. And this little church popped open, and a biography of the church was there, and read it over, and it really intrigued us. And both my wife and I decided we were going to take 30 days of just saying prayers on our own, and if it still was calling to us, we would follow up with a letter and take it from there. And lo and behold, here we are.
Well, good. We're happy to have you here.
Delighted to be here.
Glad you landed here.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, this church is just beautiful. It's stonework, and as I was reading about it, I believe I read that it is Gothic revival or Neo Gothic.
Yes.
Tell me what that means. I know a little bit about Gothic architect and the grand cathedrals in Europe, but what would, in this case, we have a small stone church. What does Neo Gothic or Gothic revival mean?
Well, it's kind of the new Gothic is the idea. And in Gothic architecture, the lines of the church draw your eyes upward. And so that's one of the beauties of the Gothic building. You walk in and you automatically look up, and that's so important theologically.
Light and airy.
Exactly.
And, right.
And so in the Neo-Gothic, it's on a much smaller scale, much smaller scale. Our little church next door seats just under 200. But it's that same vaulted roof, which is actually an inverted ship's hull. It's called the nave of the church, where we get the word navy from.
Right.
And if you were to flip that upside down, we would be in an ark traveling. We're journeying in our faith, and it's all the symbolism that's there.
There's a tremendous amount of symbolism in the architecture itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I also read this, I don't know that there's any symbolism here, but I read that the original floors are kind of special.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
They are absolutely fascinating. The fellows that were building the church, they took 2-inch ends off of 2x4s that they were using for the construction, and created dovetailing on the bottoms, and then laid out a floor plan with the matching dovetail, and they set these little blocks on top, and they used a little mallet to tap them all the way down from one end to the other in this unique pattern. It's really quite haphazard, but they're all the ends of these 2x4s, so the grain is different on every 2 or 4 inches, and it's absolutely breathtaking to see this floor. And for years it was covered with carpet.
Oh my.
Yes. And we had a flood that ended up meaning the floor had to be taken up and repaired. And that was the blessing, because we realized, gosh, we've got this beautiful floor.
Yeah. Can you imagine the amount of labor that went into that?
Incredible.
And the craftsmanship?
Incredible. And truly a labor of love.
Right. And this church was built in 1925?
Yeah, it was finished in 1925.
Yeah,
yes.
so we're looking at almost 100 years
Yes.
now
Yeah.
in this site.
And the buildings, I mean, the facility itself has been here since 1842.
Okay.
So, yeah.
The buildings surrounding it. Now, some of those buildings used to be a monastery. Is that correct?
Correct.
Monastic life never really caught on in America very much, at least not in the Catholic Church. So
Right.
tell me about that monastery that was once here.
Well, it was Bishop Ives who came to the area and was just, traveling around. And what caught his attention was the mist rising. I understand that it's the mist rising from Clark's Creek, Dutch Creek, and Crab Orchard creeks that were. It actually formed what looked like the St. Andrew's Cross, and so that's how it became known as Valle Crucis, the Veil of the Cross. That was his idea, and he was very, very high church. And at that time, there was a movement within the Anglican Church, Episcopal Church, to reestablish the monastic orders. And the Order of the Holy Cross was formed around that time. And it was actually the first monastic order since the Reformation to be formed in England. And there was a branch here. So his intention was for this to become a monastery.
Right.
And that didn't quite happen.
Does that order still exist?
The order, yeah, Holy Cross order.
But it never caught on.
Not here, but there are chapters throughout the United States.
So those buildings now, are they used here on the grounds?
Yes, and actually, Bishop Ives' cabin is one of the first buildings here. That was his home.
Okay.
It used to be down closer to the creek. It got moved up here to its current location, and was rebuilt log by log.
Wow.
And then a couple of the buildings at the conference center, what is now the conference center, were established as what was known as the mission school. And it was to be the monastic, the brothers would be here. They'd be doing their prayers, singing the psalms, doing their daily office, as we call it. But they developed agriculture, orchards. Matter of fact, for years you got your apples from Valle Crucis. They
Right.
crates of Valle Crucis apples. But none of that really caught on, and everything shut down for a few years. And then a new bishop had come along and got things going again, but it opened then as a school.
Okay. So is the apple barn down the hill here, was that part of that agricultural?
Absolutely, yes.
So it goes back that far?
Long way back. And if you go into the basement of the apple barn, you'll find all the old wash tubs where they used to have a laundry service.
Okay.
And they would do laundry for the area.
Okay. Well, I want to return to the apple barn in a little bit. But,
sure.
So as I was reading about your church and listening to some videos, a couple of people described worship here, or described this place as a thin place.
Yes.
So when we talk about that in my classes, we talk about the veil between this world and the next world becoming thin, and there being a kind of transcendence or the ability. Is that what they're talking about when they talk about this place as a thin place?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. There's that. I'm thinking the Iona community in Scotland is described very much as a thin place. There, you just have a deeper sense of the presence of God, and folks coming to this area had that same experience. Matter of fact, members of this church have said that they drove through the area when they were looking for a new place to live and went, "This is where we're going to settle." They just felt that grace of God was here. And it permeates these hills. Yeah. It's wonderful.
Do you think that's the beauty of the natural surroundings, or is there something else there? Yeah?
It's part of it. Certainly the beauty of the surroundings helps. It also helps, the people here, especially in this parish, are deeply rooted in their Christian faith and their prayer life. This is the first church I've ever had a part in where I haven't had to plead with them to please reach out to the community. They're all about outreach, you know. So that's part of that thinness. It calls us to do more than just be members.
Right. So when I think about Appalachian religion, primitive Baptists come to mind, Southern Baptist, Methodist, evangelical Christianity. We don't see many Episcopal churches around, although there is a presence here, but I'm not sure that a lot of people understand what the Episcopal Church is, where it came from. Could you give us like a thumbnail history or overview? I know that's asking a lot.
Yes.
But,
sure. The Episcopal Church is actually the Anglican Church.
The Church of England.
It was the Church of England in the United States. Came over, and matter of fact, at first, most of the colonies were all Anglican colonies. And so the Episcopal Church is very predominant, especially in Virginia and heading on up towards Boston. Boston being more Puritan, though. But golly. After the Revolutionary War, it just didn't seem right for people to be praying for our king and sovereign, King George III, or to say, I'm a member of the Church of England. And a lot of the Anglicans had left. They had fled up to Canada, who were loyalists. And so we realized that what our governance needed to be was really about who we are, how we are governed, which is by bishops, Episcopal. And so we became the Episcopal Church. But the full name of the church is the Protestant Episcopal Church in the United States of America, which is the short form of the Domestic and Foreign Missionary Society of the Protestant Episcopal Church in America.
That's a mouthful.
It is. So that's why we just say the Episcopal Church.
So do you still use the Book of Common Prayer?
We do, and it's been through a number of revisions, the latest one being 1979. And so it has both Old English and Modern English.
Oh, that's nice, So in addition to the Episcopal Church having a long history that dates back to the Reformation, we've talked a little bit about the historical significance of the Church of the Holy Cross and the monastery, but there's a chapel nearby that is special. St. John's Chapel, is that right? Or St. John's Church?
It's actually St. John the Baptist Episcopal Church.
Okay, all right. There's a longer name for everything.
Of course there is.
So the name William West Skiles was instrumental in, I guess, building the church, actually. So maybe you can tell me a little bit, and that goes back to early 19th century, right?
Yes, so it was 1840s.
1840s, I think that's what 1840s, 1860s, somewhere. So William West Skiles came to the area around 1840. He was ordained maybe into the order that you mentioned.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about St. John's Church.
Well, Brother Skiles, as he is known since he became a deacon, was instrumental here in getting this whole development restarted. And in the process, he started to build St. John's Church. And it has been moved from its original location. It was too close to the river. They've moved it back from there. But they finished it, I believe it was finished in 1862, but he died just a couple of weeks before it was actually consecrated. So he never got to worship in this little chapel, which seats 100 if you squeeze them in, 100 people. It is packed on Sunday mornings throughout the summer months. The acoustics are incredible in that space. You don't need any amplification. We have choral groups that come and ask, could they please do recordings? Could they do a concert here? And it's just beautiful. But it is, again, sacred space for us. And it's our summer chapel. We have services there in the summertime from Memorial Day to Labor Day weekend at 9 a.m.
So you're having services here and there.
Correct.
Do some of your members here go over there for the summer?
This is the fun part. Is the majority of our members, they all go to St. John's in the summer because the service is at 9, and you're finished 10:30. You can visit and have the rest of the day for yourselves.
That's good.
Most of our visitors, on the other hand, come over here to Holy Cross. They want the more formal liturgy and the stonework and stained glass.
So you shut down St. John's in the winter because there's no heat.
There's no heat.
Okay. Worship in the old way, right?
Right.
So it's a beautiful chapel, and I think I remember Skiles was instrumental in kind of organizing local labor to get it built. So a lot of the material was everything was constructed on site.
Right. They had a lumber mill, the whole works here. Yes. Yeah.
So I've read some legends that are attached to that old church. Every old church, every old building has legends attached to it, and there's some that are attached to this center too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Any truth to any of those stories, or is that just?
I better answer no.
Okay, there you go. All right, we won't go any further with that. It's interesting, old cemeteries, old buildings, historic buildings tend to have stories attached to them, and that this would be no different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that strikes me is that, and you mentioned it earlier. You said that this was one of the first places you had been where you didn't have to convince people to be active in the community. And there is a real palpable sense, I think, among your parishioners that this church has a very important role to play in this community. Yes. Talk a little bit about that.
The parish as a whole, and when I say the parish, I mean the membership and the friends of this church, take very seriously what Jesus said in Matthew 25. I was hungry and you gave me to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. And that reminder that as you have done to me, so you have done. As you have done to my sisters and brothers, so you have done to me. And this parish takes that very seriously. So someone shows up who's hungry, we're going to feed them. They need housing, we're going to help them find that housing. If they need help with a bill, we're going to find a way to help it. Our largest fundraiser each year is the Valle Country Fair, which started out as a little fair next to the apple barn down below, and now we're up to almost 10,000 people attending, and so now it's across the road here in the field below us, where it's from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And this year, attendance was a little bit lower, and our net income from that was about $71,000.
Wow.
Last year it was $82,000. And the important thing being these funds come in and they are managed by a small committee who take phone calls from folks throughout the day, 7 days a week, and help people with medical bills, heating bills, utilities, car bills, whatever's going on. People who are in need can call and get assistance. And that's why the fair is successful, because people know we don't keep it.
Right.
It goes back out, and we also fund some grants as well.
So all the money that comes in to the fair goes back to the community.
Goes right back out.
Wow,
right. It does.
That's impressive.
It's amazing. And again, I've always said this, that it's only as successful as it is because people know we don't keep it.
Right.
It goes back to the community.
So when you're giving back to the community, it's not just people in the church.
Heavens no.
It's mostly people not in the church.
Right. Yeah. And from all three counties. Watauga, Avery, and Ashe County that we're helping out. Also, then there's things, we support Hospitality House and Oasis and all these other organizations. We've always been very active in those, providing meals, whatever we can do to help. And the thing is, you don't have to beg people to help with this. They're lining up to help. It just blows my mind,
So Matthew 25, is pretty much taken as a command toward, I guess, from Jesus toward social justice
Very
issues,
much so.
right?
Yeah.
That's clearly an emphasis for you folks here in this church.
Right.
Is that also an emphasis in the broader Episcopal world?
Yes, very much so. Our church started to really shift during the civil rights movement in the 60s, where the Episcopal Church decided we were going to get involved with that on the side of improving civil rights for everyone. And that's what our membership started to shift. We lost a lot of members at that time in the broader church. But one of our presiding bishops at that time, he had an expression about drawing the circle wide, and his was draw it wider still. And we're always expanding that circle to make sure folks know that they are welcome. If God welcomes me, then God can welcome anyone. So that's our invitation. That's why we say all are welcome. Yeah. And very much focused on social justice. Yeah. Very much so.
So when you talk about missions,
Mm-hmm.
or another way to talk about outreach.
Right.
You're concerned with existential issues and concerns, poverty and hunger and
Correct.
homelessness and all the other things that
Right.
Equality of
Right.
civil rights, racial equality, gender equality, and so forth. The whole gamut.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's that I think the closest thing you could just compare it to would be the social gospel movement from back of the turn of the earlier century, turn of the 1900s, and with Dorothy Day and all those wonderful folks who truly believe that it is the Christian. It is the Christian way of life to make life better for others. Mm-hmm. And it all comes from our faith in Christ, our faith in God.
Yeah. All right, so you mentioned the Valley Fair.
Yes.
I drove up here, I guess, from Boone. down here from Boone.
Yes, down
I
from
drove
Boone.
down here from Boone, a lot of curvy little roads.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get 10,000 people in here on a weekend
Well, it's
in the autumn? I mean, that's...
I think we're still trying to answer that question. We have, not only we have the Valley Country Fair, there's also the Woolly Worm Festival going on the same weekend in
Banner. And this little road is...
This is the road I live on, so it's just up and down, it's traffic. But over the years, in working with the Sheriff's Department and our volunteers, they've come up with unique ways to get people in and out easier. It used to be one driveway in and one out. So the roads aren't as congested, but it is, I mean, a lot of people coming. And then when they leave here, they'll go up to the Woolly Worm, or folks will finish at Woolly Worm and come down. We really do support each other. And
it's hard to... it's hard to imagine how curvy that little road is unless you travel it, right? I mean, it's just...
I had a colleague visit one time who was saying, gosh, it's really a lovely area and you have these roads coming in. And he said, so there's probably not a problem people getting here in the winter. And I said, no, it's no problem getting here. They can't get home.
Right, that's right. I can imagine.
Trying to go uphill.
All right, so you also have a conference center on site.
We do, yes.
And those are newer buildings,
Yes, they are.
So what sort of events do you host at the conference center? Well,
and that is the Valle Crucis Conference Center, and which is a separate entity under the Episcopal Church, under the Episcopal Church of the Western Diocese of North Carolina. And all this land, everything is owned by our diocese. Mm-hmm. We have this section here, and the conference center has its own board. I'm on the board ex officio. They have small reunion groups. There's the Piping Festival is here every summer. It's a piping school that's been going on for years. Bagpipes, I should say. Yes, not plumbers.
Right.
No, they can come too. There's the piping school. There's a fiddlers group that comes in. There's all sorts of arts and craft folks. There's seminars that are given. There's writing workshops. It's a plethora of things that they offer next door, and they have accommodations for overnight and meals and several buildings for housing for folks as well as for meeting.
Very nice.
And it's over 400 acres, and there's a waterfall up in the trail on the back, and it's fascinating.
I should have asked you that sooner. 400 acres.
400, yes.
That's a large property.
It is. It is.
Very valuable property. Everything in the mountains is now.
Yeah.
So
and it's fortunate, a lot of it is under the Conservancy. So this area is protected from any further development that might get away from that beauty of this place.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that, back to the church part, that you have a pretty diverse worshiping community here. There's not a lot of racial or ethnic diversity in the mountains at all. So what do you mean by diversity in your community here in Valle Crucis?
Probably from an age standpoint, I joke with folks that my youth group are the 40-year-olds.
That's right.
It's because very much Valle Crucis and the surrounding areas are heavily populated by retirees or newly retired folks or empty nesters. And so we're diverse in our age groups in that regard, but very diverse politically. We have to the farthest right you can be and to the farthest left you can be. And what has always impressed me here is, for a while, the head of the local Tea Party was a member here, active member. She has since passed away. Yeah. And also the poster child for Moral Monday unrest demonstrations was our senior warden. And so you have these two folks who disagree passionately on matters of politics, and yet it never got in the way of them kneeling side by side at the altar to receive communion. We don't let that get in our way.
That's impressive.
And it's rare that happens.
Do you think that sort of diversity is a product of being rural, where you are here, and then having the university? Well, you're between two universities,
yes.
Lisa McCrae College and Appalachian State University. So those kinds of institutions tend to bring a more liberal element in.
Right. And we have a lot of farmers who are members here, local farmers, but we do have faculty from App State, and we've been known to start a service with an App State cheer at the start if they won a game. So that's, it's that diversity of political thought and focus.
And the Episcopal tradition is open enough to embrace that kind of diversity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So for those who are watching who have never been to an Episcopal worship service, Episcopalians are known for a kind of high church and liturgical service. What goes on in the service? Just a brief description of.
We use the Book of Common Prayer, which doesn't mean we can't do prayer extemporaneously, but we have an order of worship that we follow. And it includes prayers of the people. People are allowed to speak aloud prayers as they wish. But there is what we call a formal liturgy. It includes hearing scripture readings from the Old Testament, the New Testament, a psalm, and the gospel, and that's required for every service. And every week we gather, we share communion. It is part of who we are. And we have our sacraments, communion, and baptism, but also the other sacraments that are there are matrimony and confession, and those are available to folks. A lot of folks describe the Episcopal Church as Catholic light, and I'm not sure I really like that expression, but it's very much that older tradition as far as coming together. We have a common worship, so we have a common language. The prayer will be, "The Lord be with you," and we say, "and also with you." Everyone says the same things back and forth. So there's that common tongue, that common language that's being used. And of course, there's a gospel-focused sermon and the prayers, and then we're sent forth. And so it's very similar to the Roman tradition in that regard, but also it's very similar then to the United Methodist and to our Lutheran brothers and sisters. Right. It's very, very, very similar.
Well, the Methodist tradition grew out of the Anglican tradition.
Yes, it did.
So there is a kind of a commonality of history and some theology that's shared between the two.
Yes.
I have a friend who was raised in an evangelical tradition, and he married into an Episcopal family, and he said the first time he went, he had the Book of Common Prayer, and he had a hymnal, and he had his Bible, and he was kneeling and up and down. He didn't know what to do. It's a little bit confusing.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do our leaflets now. For the most part, everything is in the leaflet other than the hymns. You can look up the hymns. But we realize that for the visitor, especially if they've got a young child with them, trying to juggle hymnals and books.
So you reproduce the readings into one
makes it easier.
Oh, that makes it easier, yeah.
And it's, we generally sit for instruction, we stand for praise, and we kneel for prayer. But as we age, everything says, "as you're able."
Yes, right.
So, and I feel that as a priest at the front, I'm going, I'm not sure I can kneel this time.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Well, just in the closing moments here that we have, what would you tell people the Episcopal tradition has to offer the High Country?
Gosh. I would say what we offer is a genuine welcome, and not just as in, hi, how are you type thing. It's, we want to get to know you. We want to worship with you. We want to pray with you, as opposed to you joining us. We want to join with you.
Awesome.
And we say, you know, the Episcopal Church welcomes you, no exceptions, and we try to practice that. And we all recognize that we are God's children, that we were all created in the same image of God, that we can disagree on various things, but we have the same Creator. And so let's pray together and see if this world can be made better.
Yeah. Well, those are nice words to end on.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you. I appreciate allowing us to invade your space today, but this is a beautiful area, and it's a pleasure being here.
It has been our pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it for Religion and Life for this week. I hope you join us again next week on App TV as we continue to explore the role that religion plays in society and culture. Until then, this is Ozzie Ostwald.